Get started with the simple question. Is Trump a fascist? I know it sounds a bit generic, but this is the big talking point that kind of persisted for the past 10 years. Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. He's authoritarian. He's far right. He's fascistic, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know who wants to start off first, but Luke, is he a fascist?
Yeah, you know, we can debate that particular label. I've noticed when I've watched past debates among MAGA folks, the benefit, or at least what they seem to thrive off of, is getting real into the weeds on a particular semantic debate. That's less relevant to me than going through the specifics of why I might call him that. But let's not get so focused on the label, but instead whether or not we find moral, whether or not we find.
No, let's get focused on the label. So listen, here's why.
Because you can't defend. Well,
first
finish
of
off
all,
my point though. You can't defend. Well, hold on. I'm going to finish this. You can't defend what he does. So then you try to distract from that with just really abstract
from your
label
lies.
discussions.
Yeah, from your lies.
What he's done or lies?
So you can't.
No. So first of all, hang on,
did?
Luke. Semantics are super important to a debate for a reason. It's so that we have clarity in what we're actually talking about. So when you go, Trump's a fascist, yeah, it's very important that you clarify exactly what that means, why it means that, what the historic standard is that you're providing against
But I'm saying that debate is an interesting one. I've had it a bunch of times. Less relevant than whether or not you can defend the things he did factually, not the labels, the facts of what he did.
Why are you calling him a fascist then, Luke? If you're not prepared to defend it.
Tim brought that up. I'm interested in.
Well, it's so
you call him that, Luke. Why do you call him that unless you can defend it?
He is called in the media a fascist over and over and over again for 10 years.
And
he calls him that.
My question is, most importantly, then we can get to that. Can you defend the things that we point to as a threat to democracy, as anti-democratic, whatever label you use? I just don't care about getting that bogged down.
Can you defend that he's a fascist or not, Luke?
I absolutely have had that discussion a bunch of times.
That's not what I asked you. Can you repeat my question? I asked you, can you defend that he's a fascist?
We would point out things that we might describe as authoritarian or fascistic, even if you don't agree with a particular label. And that's what he's saying we want to talk about. So, for example, did he plot to overturn the 2020 election? Did he resist the peaceful transfer of power? Does he command a cult of personality? These are factual questions.
Does he threaten the media?
This is not. I'm not going to make a whataboutism. I'm going to say, okay, let's start from that presumption that would make Trump a fascist. That would also make Obama or Biden or Kamala much the same.
Which we can discuss, which is false.
What you just described as Donald Trump would apply to them in
they assemble fraudulent slates of elections.
When have they ever resisted the peaceful transfer of power or plotted to overturn an election?
I believe this was the first election in 52 years the Democratic Party has not challenged the election.
No, you're talking about the thing that is within congressional rules, which is you can object to the account. That's different than assembling from different states people who aren't the lawful electors and then trying to get them counted by your vice president as the real one. That's completely different.
But that is also a procedure.
So one is a you can't just get random people to sign fake forms saying they're the real
not fake
electors.
Forms.
They were.
They're not fake forms.
You know why the people were
prosecuted? What do you think we mean by fake forms?
States?
Like we obviously it's not an invisible
you need to define what a fake form is.
We don't mean by an invisible piece of paper. It was a fraudulent document.
Wait, that's semantics, Tim.
Yeah.
Like I said, very important to debates.
Because you can't
we don't want to spend 45 minutes on what's a fake form.
Right, the issue here is we're talking about a play upon precedent with what Donald Trump did, and the basis for what Donald Trump did and his lawyers in 2021 was built upon what happened in the election between Nixon and Kennedy, when Hawaii sent a non-certified slate. Would you call that fake as well?
No, in that case, this was before the certification had happened. The state sent two slates.
Incorrect.
In these cases, there were certifications by each state and then verified by the governor, then sent to Washington, and those were the ones Trump wanted to get counted.
It
did not represent the lawful outcome of the elections in those states. Y'all agree with that?
Agree with you about what?
That's what Trump was trying to do, getting electors that weren't the ones lawfully certified by the states to get counted?
No.
Okay.
What do you mean?
Cool. Then.
Wait, what was he doing?
So we'll pull this up. Hang on.
Okay.
One step at a time.
So in Hawaii, it just disappeared on me. Why does it do that? And I'm using Wikipedia, which I'm not a big fan of because it is oversimplified and often wrong. But it says that Hawaii official results showed Nixon winning by a small margin. Hawaii's 3 electoral votes were cast for Nixon. Acting Governor James Keelio has certified the Republican electors, and they cast Hawaii's 3 electors for Nixon. However, clear discrepancies existed, blah, blah, blah. The court challenge was still ongoing at the time of the electoral count's safe harbor deadline, but Democratic electors still convened on the constitutionally mandated date of December 19th and cast their votes for Kennedy. Would you consider those to be illegitimate votes because it had already been certified for the Republican?
And then can we keep reading?
Continue.
The recount completed before Christmas resulted in Kennedy being declared the winner by 115 votes. On December 30th, the circuit court ruled that Hawaii's 3 electoral votes should go to Kennedy. It was decided that a new certificate was necessary with only 2 days remaining before Congress convened to count and certify the Electoral College votes. A letter to Congress saying a certificate was on the way was rushed out by registered airmail. Both Democratic and Republican electoral votes from Hawaii were presented for counting on January 6th, and Vice President Nixon, who presided over the certification, graciously said, without the intent of establishing a precedent, and requested unanimous consent, the Democratic votes for Kennedy be counted.
Right.
So the clarification here, let's make sure it's very clear.
Sure.
The Democratic votes were never certified. They were intending to certify, but because the deadline was approaching, they submitted false documents, as you described it, before certification was done.
No, because the circuit court ruled that the electoral vote should go to Kennedy.
Hold on. I got to stop you. The circuit court has nothing to do with the convening of Democrats to file false papers. Did the Democrats convene without a court order and sign documents that were not real?
Was the president trying to get the ones that didn't?
Let's answer the question.
This is the question. Because we're talking about Donald Trump's actions.
Right, so we're starting with precedent.
We're talking about Donald Trump's actions.
I asked you a question and you changed the subject.
Did the sitting president at the time try to get, after the court cases had been resolved, try to get the Democratic
we have to start from the
electors counted? They didn't.
Let's start here. Did the Democrats...
None of y'all are even engaging with that fact.
Are you going to answer the question?
You're going to go and spin and spin and spin because you can't engage with the fact that you do.
You're pattering.
You know
you're pattering.
That Trump was trying to get Pence. What was Trump trying to get Pence to do?
You are pattering.
What was Trump trying to get Pence to do?
You are pattering.
Can
we stop and go back to the debate?
Keep repeating that.
Sure.
This is the debate.
So
what did the president of the United States do at the time?
You're just pattering. All right, I'm going to say it again. We are reading a specific passage on what Hawaii did, and we are at a specific point in the logical question. Hawaii Democrats were not certified. They filled out paperwork. Pause. The courts had not approved anything.
At that
were those documents, yes or no, real or fake?
At that point in time, the recount hadn't even concluded.
Yes or no, were the documents real or fake?
When the Trump electors met, Georgia had already counted its ballots. I'm explaining to you the
I am not asking you about
You're
Trump.
correct. If those forms had then been asserted as the lawful ones during the counting process, that would be fraudulent, yes, but they weren't.
So they submitted documents that were unapproved, not certified to the federal government.
Which ones ended up being the ones that the federal government was going to certify?
Why is this so hard?
Oh my gosh!
Why is the reason that it seems
I'll lay it out.
You're doing it
out with y'all.
You see, this is the thing. You guys are trying to present some sophistry as to your argument.
No, you can't engage with what Trump did. That's exactly what you're doing.
I'm going to make my point.
You can't engage with what Trump did.
I'll make my point. Stop pattering.
And then will you let us make our points?
So, absolutely. The problem is I'm asking about Hawaii and you keep changing the subject to Trump. So let's go through Hawaii. The Democrats had no right, by your logic, to fill out this paperwork and submit it to the federal government as the certified slate of electors. Only after the fact did the court make a decision. Now let's go to 2020. If there is pending court decisions, and there were, Republicans doing the same thing Democrats did.
No, you're wrong. The circuit court decided that a new certificate was necessary
after the fact.
Before Congress convened.
Yes, but after
talking about,
they had already submitted the documents. This is why I'm asking you, when you said they were false documents, I didn't say anything else. What makes them false? It's the same as Hawaii. If you want to make the argument that Democrats did the same thing in 1960, I will agree with you.
But we're not making that argument because that's not what they did.
This is the point. In 1960, while there was still a recount going on and ongoing court cases, and it was so narrow they really didn't know which way it was going to go. Then they didn't even submit those or try to get them counted. The sitting president at the time until it was determined Trump's case, he got all 7 states after this whole process had been concluded. It wasn't close enough for the recount to flip it. The recounts had concluded, and he was trying to get not let's have 2 standing by because we don't know how this recount's going to go, but from 7 states that we know the outcome of, but I'm making false claims of fraud on them. I'm going to get Pence to keep me as president by accepting fake electors. Tim, for a second, because we're supposed to be debating them, I think, could they also try to defend this stance?
Yeah, because you're comparing apples and oranges thing as far as I'm concerned. That was
silly.
Yeah, like if a court decided in one of the 5 or 7 states that Trump tried to peddle the false elector scheme, that if a court contested the Democratic slate of electors, then I think you would have an apples to apples comparison. But that's not what happened. In none of the 7 states.
And it wasn't close enough to where they didn't know which way it was going to go.
Right, there was no actual ambiguity.
Yeah. Andrew, anything? Myron?
Well, what's the argument here? Is it fascism, or because you guys went into a whole other tangent?
Because
you guys went. I don't know if you guys. It started with fascism, but we went into Kennedy election in 1960s.
I'll explain. One of the key tenets of, again, I know you'll get really triggered, so I'm trying to stay away from that particular term, but we can say fascism, authoritarianism,
Fascism is based. I don't know what
anti-democracy.
It's pretty fucking base. I don't know what the issue is, baby.
Is that legitimate or a joke? Because we can go into that. That'd be interesting.
I mean, we can go ahead.
Now suddenly you want to talk about fascism.
One of the key tenets is rejecting democratic principles and the democratic process.
According to who?
According to every single fascism scholar ever and the definition.
Okay.
Do you mean according to who, like what determines the democratic processes?
No, I'm asking according to who.
Yeah, sure, read it.
Yeah, go ahead. So far right authoritative. No. Pull up Giovanni Gentile. This would be the person that you guys would like to use.
You see?
As an authority. Yeah.
The audience
Where did we
can
cite
watch. They're terrified.
Gentile? I thought it was Gentile. When did we cite him?
I'm sorry. Is reading a Wikipedia article proof of your position?
No. Getting into a hyper specific definitional discussion. I don't care what you call it. Bad. Let's say bad. Bad is what I think Trump did. And that's what I'm trying to get you to see, not the definition, because I know you feel way more comfortable spinning around and reading about whoever. Instead, we can just talk about, regardless of the definition, is it good or bad to reject democratic results? Is it good or bad to threaten the media based on my principles, which value democratic?
What do you mean threaten the media?
So Trump has repeatedly called for like investigations into reporters, into media outlets. He believes that the business licenses of like ABC and CBS, MSNBC, he says, should be pulled. I mean, you don't see these sorts of threats from the Democratic Party.
Okay, so let's get into them.
And even if you did.
Has Trump pulled anybody's license ever as president? Has he actually sent any government officials to do any investigations at any major?
So you agree, though?
Stop.
Him saying
Stop, bro. I just let you go through your whole stupid spiel.
You keep not
Has
making
Trump
sense, though.
actually
Kind of boring.
done that?
Are threats not bad?
And first of all, hyperbole isn't a threat. That's one.
Trump.
And hang on.
CBS should be
And
taken off the air, should they?
what I want to see, so as Spurgley over here keeps on losing his mind, he doesn't want to get into hyper-specifics.
Spurgley?
He doesn't want to get into hyper-specific semantics because that would cause what we'd like to call clarification. That way we're not talking past each other.
I don't think you're hearing what I'm saying.
Yeah, dude, I just gave you your whole spiel. So anyway, the reason I want to get specific about this, about what fascism is, about whether or not Trump is actually a fascist, whether or not Trump actually enacted fascist policy, all of these things is because you guys, you can't sit on your shows and say, this guy's a fascist, he's an authoritarian, he's a dictator, he's a threat to democracy, and then give us nothing. Just like, oh, he used some hyperbole about the media.
We just talked about examples.
He tried to stay in office despite losing an election.
Yeah, okay, hang on. We'll get to that stuff in a second. Right now we're talking about something else. We're talking about the media. Calm down. Calm down, Spurgley.
That's what's so annoying.
Calm down, Spurgley.
But Andrew, that's just a misrepresentation of our position. You say that we give you nothing. We're giving you specific things that he did, which
not with the no. You made this claim that Trump has done bad things to the media. He wants to pull their license. He wants to take something away from them.
He's threatened to do those things.
Where has he done them?
So do you think that it's acceptable unless he follows through on it?
Yeah, I think that hyperbole is fine. I think that presidents use hyperbole all the time. I think that liberals use hyperbole. So for instance, I'm going to give you an example. When you say Trump's a fascist, I think that's hyperbole.
Would you?
Because I don't think you actually think he's a fascist. I think that you just think fascism means authoritarianism. You don't even know what the fuck it is. You don't care about it. Hang on. So I think you're actually using hyperbole when you're talking about fascism in general. So when Trump uses it, when Trump uses hyperbole, when Trump is speaking this way, Trump bad. When you're speaking this way, that's fine.
Andrew, you're a smart guy. You should be able to recognize meaningful differences between just a random schmuck and then the president of the United States. Number one. Number two, I don't think it's hyperbole at all. We're talking about specific things, specific examples of things that Trump has either done or threatened to do.
Like he said, Zuckerberg should be in prison now. Zuckerberg's implementing policies that are more friendly to him.
So let me ask you guys a question. We're talking a lot about the threats, and Andrew asked about what he had done. Do you think if Donald Trump threatened to kill an American, that would be fascistic?
Well, fascistic?
Well, again, I mean, so
we're gonna
just to clarify.
Yeah, I know it's really you're gonna try to go somewhere. Blah, blah, blah. I want to stay focused because
no one's allowed to talk but Spurgley.
Yeah, come on.
No one's allowed to talk but Spurgley.
I'm trying to advance the conversation by asking a question to clarify the point.
I'm going to go back to what we were talking about.
You guys said he's threatening the media. Andrew said that he hasn't actually done it. So I'm trying to say, what if it was a more extreme threat that wasn't just I'll pull a license? What if Trump said he would kill an American citizen? Would the threat of killing an American in and of itself, without the action of doing it, be fascistic? And this is for everybody.
Specifically, like he's gonna
if Trump said, "I'm gonna shoot a guy on Fifth Avenue," I'm gonna go do it right now. My point being, threatening to take legal action, we can argue whether it seems kind of a legalese question. So I'm trying to shift it to let's talk about an extreme action Trump could threaten.
Okay. Well, I still haven't gotten
an
explanation of how it's acceptable to try to block the peaceful transfer of power from Andrew, which is what I keep saying. You brought up the fascism word. I said, hey, I get that people get real bogged down, which is why I've had hours of discussions about that particular term. I came here interested to see if MAGA figures could defend the actual actions, not the label, but the actions. And I'm yet to hear you walk through any of them. We're getting a little bit to the specifics of the media, so I appreciate that. But so to answer your question, him trying to induce a feeling of fear among the media as it's working with his rhetoric, with clear intentions, some of which he didn't actually get done the last time, but like he wanted.
Let me explain why I asked the question.
And I'm still waiting on either of them.
So here's why I asked the question about killing an American specifically.
Obama, I know.
No, it's because whether or not the government can pull a license is a legal question over whether or not they violated a public license. And so you guys are then arguing outside of the actual confines of a legal issue, which so let's make it definitively an issue of illegal or legal.
Or we could talk about what Trump is.
Okay, the federal government grants public licenses with stipulations. If you want to debate whether or not they can or can't, that's a legal procedural question.
You understand you can have the governmental power to do something, but how you leverage it for the purpose.
This is why I tried shifting away to something more direct, like killing somebody. A threat to kill somebody is a direct question.
Well, the government can kill people.
The government can kill people.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. Like, to me, this belies the point of it. Like, this idea that it can't be authoritarian or it can't be fascist if it is within the technical legal confines of the federal government. That's absurd.
That's not the point I'm making.
Of course.
Which is why, again, the semantics would be really important here to clarify what we mean when we say fascist.
No one's bringing that up. We don't care about the label.
I'm bringing it up, Spurgley.
We're giving you specific.
Yeah, but that doesn't actually tell me what we mean by this.
Guys, sure, it makes for great clips, but we don't need the ad hominems. You called him boring. You're calling him Spurgley. We don't need to do that.
Oh, well, boring. I mean, the conversation.
I don't think you're boring.
I don't think you're boring.
I'm not.
I just thought the conversation was getting.
And he is
boring,
Spurging. But anyway.
Call me out, whatever.
I'm actually happy to dive into this. You say that I'm avoiding your questions. I'm not. First of all, I'll answer them directly.
Sure.
It's well within Trump's rights, even if it was. Let's just say you were right. Let's just say I grant it. It's within his rights to set alternatives electors. He's well within his rights to do that. Tell me why that's even wrong.
Aren't people being prosecuted in states for participating in this scheme?
Who?
The fake electors.
Ooh.
In all
Wait, I got a question. Does the law prescribe morality?
No.
Wait, you said the right. Do you mean legal right or moral
yes
right?
Or no question. About it.
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm mad. No, I thought it was a good question.
So what's actually wrong with it?
So
Why is it even problematic?
because he didn't win the election.
So let's just say he didn't.
Okay. Well, then agree.
Stop, Spurgley. Let's just say he didn't. Let's just assume
Kamala?
it.
Just
Stop,
add Kamala?
Spurgley.
Could Kamala
Let's
have
just can I have a back and forth for
The election
2
was stolen.
seconds?
I mean,
without you nipping my heels.
This is interesting that we're even on this. Like, the election was stolen, guys. That is why
the 2024 election.
The 2020 election.
Oh shit,
it was stolen.
I mean, I'd like to just dive into this so that we can figure this out real quick.
Why was it stolen? How was it stolen? That's a
multitude of different factors here. I mean, I wrote it down. We got the mail-in ballot fraud.
That was a pretty sleek move there.
Dominion voting systems, vote counting observers, late-night ballot dumps, ballot harvesting, double voting, foreign interference, improper voter registration practices, manipulation by poll workers, geolocation data, surveillance footage, whistleblowers, vulnerabilities in election laws, suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop. I mean, what else? I mean, I think anyone with any common sense would understand, because we're talking about the fascism and he challenged the election, all this other stuff. Let's talk about why he challenged it. It was
because he lost.
No, because it was stolen.
Right.
It was stolen.
Sure?
There's a multitude of evidence to show that the
court?
2020 election, there was some type of interference to some degree. There's a multitude.
Which court he was able to demonstrate that in?
Pennsylvania, in the lower court, ruled on the merits that they violated.
It was like a procedural, but not.
No, it was an actual hearing where
the
judge said that the Constitution of Pennsylvania was violated by the implementation of universal mail-in voting. The Supreme Court overturned the rule.
And he just
that's the higher court, right? So we should probably.
So he asked me which court did it. I said,
right. I understand, but I assume he's referring to like a court's verdict or a court's ruling.
And you just listed a bunch of like you brought up geolocation data. That was in like 2,000 mules, and they had to admit when
but the
reason this is a terrible
argument. Different factors.
The reason this is a terrible argument is because if I say, okay, well then who got prosecuted for insurrection? You'll say, well, just because they weren't prosecuted for insurrection doesn't mean it wasn't an insurrection. It's
no,
like,
I'm saying you actually have to
okay,
prove
great.
Claims, not
just because, well, hang on,
exactly,
Luke. Yeah. Well, just because he wasn't able to demonstrate that the election was stolen in a court because they threw most of it out on standing doesn't mean it wasn't stolen. It just means that we had a bunch of judges
about the guy
who went after it on standing. But there is a lot of evidence here that should be looked at. I'm not saying it was stolen. It's not my position. Okay, but I am saying that.
Do you have a position on just out of curiosity?
I think it should be investigated, and it never properly was.
Being investigated.
No, yeah. When Trump is in office, I think he should actually run a real investigation into it. I think that the idea that Trump, so Biden takes the White House, that there was a legitimate investigation done by the Biden administration for the guy he could have lost to. I think that that's ridiculous.
But doesn't that motive work the opposite way too?
Go ahead.
Like doesn't that motive work the opposite way? Because Trump's position was before the election, it's stolen, it's rigged.
Well,
and during the
that's a fair criticism. I just think that you have enough third-party people which can be approached who could investigate this in a way in which it was fair.
But they hired like third-party groups. So like was it Cyber Ninjas?
They weren't
and others?
First of all, they weren't able to subpoena a lot of the evidence that they wanted. They had a lot of the circuit courts throw things out on standing. I do not think that this was a legitimate investigation. And there are some things that should be investigated. For instance, it's not a secure election to have people just dropping ballots unsecured in a ballot box. That's insanity.
Yeah, but respectfully, Andrew, like subpoenas and standing, these things are like valid legal constructs. Like you have to meet like probable cause for a subpoena. If you don't have probable cause to get a subpoena, then that's on you. And if you don't have standing to bring a case, then again, that's on you. Like
the problem is that
are you saying?
Hang on, it's an allocate. Can I answer one question at a time, dude?
I'm trying to let you.
And I'm just like literally trying to talk to the guy. I think that it's fine. And I think you bring up a valid point, but I think when you have a Justice Department, you can instruct your Justice Department how to prioritize different situations. I think it's fine for Trump to say, listen, I still think that there was foul play in this election. And even if there wasn't, let's just decide it once and for all. Let's get it figured out once and for all. And instruct his Justice Department to begin investigating whether or not there was some type of foul play going on.
Investigation. And who conducted the investigation? You said someone got hired.
A guy named Kim
Republicans,
Block,
I think, in Arizona hired.
Was an independent. They got like the Cyber Ninjas in Arizona.
So they already lost because they don't have the authority to properly do the investigation. You need federal agents, 1811s, FBI special agents to do the case. That's how it goes.
Trump's administration was the one investigating it that then came back to Trump and enraged him by saying we can't find any evidence, and
because they don't have the authority to.
They don't have the
evidence.
This is what you're going to do.
FBI agents to do it
until the end of time. Is say there's never been enough investigations, or you could admit that all of the available evidence doesn't prove it. So
let's advance from the election issue.
We can
okay. So don't just keep moving the goalposts. You have to admit that of the investigations that have been done and all the evidence that we've gathered.
That's the last thing I want to add on this too. Like to me, it's like, what about the standard? Did you call for investigations into 2016? What about 2024? Should Democrats, the next time they're in power, like forensically audit, the 2024 election? Would you be satisfied with that?
They do ask for these things.
But we're off of that.
I'm sorry.
We're off of that. So then we're off of that. But do you agree?
Well, I've got a topic for you guys based on what you have asked. So I want to ask a question. So one of the things that kicked this off was you guys asked about Trump's threats to the media.
Yeah.
Recently, Mark Zuckerberg went on the Joe Rogan podcast and said that he was getting phone calls from the Biden administration screaming and cursing at him, and that they were effectively pressured into censoring information. One of these stories in particular, Mark Zuckerberg said that the feds went to him and said, there will be information on Hunter Biden. This will be Russian disinformation. Knowing that they were pressuring and screaming at them, Facebook ultimately removed this story, which according to a few pollsters, they believe, did swing the election by a few, or swing public opinion on Trump by a few points. I'm curious your guys' thoughts on that story.
I was just to say, if there's like any evidence that the Biden administration threatened Facebook to like censor disinformation, that's fucked up, and I would condemn that wholeheartedly, 100%. But so number one, I think Zuckerberg was asked about this by, was it Rogan? It was like, do you have any like, evidence of that or any recordings? He was like, no, unfortunately. And to me, the other thing I really want to emphasize here, every administration, including Trump's, engaged with social media to like the intelligence agencies to like say, hey, this might be a potential terroristic threat. This might be a violation of national security. This might violate your own TOS, number one. And number two, I recall during the Twitter Files congressional hearing, we found out that even on petty shit, that the Trump administration reached out to Twitter to ask them to remove a tweet by Chrissy Teigen, John Legend's wife, because she called him a pussy-ass bitch. Like, there's never like a perfectly demarcated line, but I expect that there's going to be engagement between social media and the intelligence agencies of every administration. But when you're asking people to take down tweets because you referred to the president as a pussy ass bitch, that's weak.
So let me respond to this.
Yeah, but if they did it, we'd be against it.
Dude, I don't just calm down. You'll get a chance. So anyway, to respond to this, I think you make some valid points, but there's some there that aren't really valid. So yeah, sure. So let's say someone in the Trump administration or even Trump himself is like, hey, can you take this tweet down? I don't like it. It hurts my feelings, right? Fine. You can condemn it. You can say, it's an abuse of power or something like this. Seems like a kind of vague abuse of power. But there's a distinction when Facebook is being contacted by the Biden administration to tell them to censor all anti-COVID vaccination information, period. To take those things down, to throw people off who are disseminating this information, this and that. He says, this is now narrative building. This is, I want you, this giant, enormous media outlet, to build the narrative that my administration wants. And I'm going to use the coercive power of my office to do it. There's a distinction, I think, between that and I don't like this tweet, take it down.
So, again, if that's exactly what happened, I'd probably be inclined to agree, but there's no evidence of that. The number one, it was
just Zuckerberg saying it.
Wait a minute. What I mean is, so again, it depends very much on the nature of the engagement between the government and Facebook. Again, if they threaten Facebook, if you don't take this down, there will be consequences or something like that, besides just requests or even strong requests. There's also a public health emergency at issue here. So even if you disagree with what the federal government under Donald Trump, by the way, because a lot of this happened in 2020, and under the Biden administration, if you disagree with why they were pressuring it, to me, because that line is not perfectly demarcated, it's more understandable why the federal government would be urging social media companies to crack down on disinformation they believe will kill people. Well, just let me finish.
Yeah.
As opposed to the president of the United States, the most powerful man in the world, pressuring a social media company because a celebrity insulted him.
Yeah,
that is indefensibly stupid.
Okay, first of all, there's far less.
Let me
finish our exchange, dude. You'll get a chance.
Is your exchange gonna
You'll
be?
get a
Sheesh.
chance, dude.
Sheesh.
You'll get a chance.
Let me quickly
We're
go
almost done with
through
our
it.
exchange. Calm down.
How long is it going to be?
So anyway, look, this will be the last thing, okay, Luke? And then we'll take it over to you.
Great.
Anyway, this is called rational discussion. I know it's hard for you, but anyway, I think it's fine. I think it's fine to make the criticism. I don't want the president to call and ask to take down a tweet. Fine. Again, though, when you're talking about narrative building from the Justice Department contacting Facebook itself, trying to construct a narrative, how much more fascistic can you get, authoritarianism can you get, then there's a counter narrative out here about COVID. There's a counter narrative here about some of the therapeutics. And by the way, Zuckerberg has since said some of the things that they were saying on the counter side were true. And they were asking us to take these things down. And we complied. And it's like, that's pretty fascistic. That's pretty authoritarian.
Let me throw in one thing before we jump to Luke. I actually personally don't care for either story, COVID vaccine stuff. It's big, I get it. And targeting someone because they're personally mean to you is actually kind of worrying. The more concerning thing to me that often is missed was the censorship of Eric Charamella, which just by saying that name, YouTube might delete the stream. When
say it then. Shit, this is why I came all this way.
I think
just say Eric C. Yeah.
We'll send you the broadcast.
The point needs to be made. When an employee of the CIA, I believe he was an employee, but when someone working with the CIA released information that resulted in the impeachment of Donald Trump, and the Real Clear Investigations released the report that the individual had been identified by as Eric Charamella, every major social media platform, I think Twitter did not do this at the time, would censor any information with that name without warning, without a strike, just simply remove it. So I think when we look at the censorship of big tech, we can talk about public information like COVID vaccines. It is particularly worrying to me that Facebook, in all of this, especially with this story, they had a portal made for the feds to report quote unquote misinformation. We're actively censoring stories of deep political merit, and they still have never accounted for it nor answered for it.
Yeah, so let me.
And Zuckerberg says he was coerced.
Let me jump in.
He said he felt coerced.
So, as Jessiah and I mentioned, we're not really interested in being blindly partisan as some folks are. And so if you have an example of the Biden administration crossing a line, we'll just denounce it. Strange that you wouldn't do the same with Trump, which is a part of what I'm trying to flesh out here. But whenever the case was brought to the Supreme Court relating to some of this with Facebook, you might remember, and they ended up ruling against the plaintiffs who were saying they were unfairly censored because of the government being involved. And one of the things they found out was that the social media platforms, long before government was asking anything on COVID misinfo, already was implementing a terms of service stuff on that. And you can have an issue with that. And in this new world where we have these platforms, all this power, we're going to be grappling over what the right terms of service, probably not no terms of service, but certain rules. But we can all disagree on how that's structured. But whether or not it's like a violation of the First Amendment relating to the government getting involved, it got slapped down by the Supreme Court because there's just not the evidence that the platforms felt coerced. Because you will look at the percentages, even in portals like this one, where they would say, hey, we think this violates your term of service. And the platforms would go, no, it doesn't. Yeah. And they would say no. And then the government would go, all right, that's all we can do.
This is
well,
new.
I mean, censorship in general is a problem.
Well, this is new stuff. What we're talking about now, this is new stuff which is coming out. Zuckerberg whistleblowing about a bunch of stuff we did not previously know.
Right.
You're referencing stuff that has come out, multiple years ago. What I'm saying to you specifically here is that there's no way for you to say, if you're going to say Trump is an authoritarian, he's evil, he's there to curtail the media, this type of thing. If the Biden administration's working in tandem, their Justice Department, trying to be coercive to Mark Zuckerberg to censor off information, specifically from conservatives, by the way. They were the ones who were mostly trying to give a counter narrative on the COVID-19 stuff, different political stuff, the J6 stuff. He said he was approached by the DOJ on all of these different things, and so was Facebook. It sounds like they're trying to create a narrative within one of the largest social media company platforms, which is out there, which benefits their administration. How much more authoritarian can you get than that?
And they banned Trump off everything right after.
Yeah.
Like they literally banned him. He got nuked
That was
off
while
the
Trump
internet.
was president.
That was while Trump was president, number one. But just real quick on this. So this, yes, he's referencing a Supreme Court case, which occurred. You agree? You're right that the Zuckerberg revelations
Same
are
stuff.
relatively recent.
Yeah.
But I mean, here's my question.
Sure.
Do you trust Mark Zuckerberg? Here's the reason why. I know you don't, Tim. I know this. So I think it's important because a lot of people who even now are happy that Zuckerberg is adopting a more MAGA posture, for example. They don't trust him. They call him a fair weather friend because wherever the political winds blow. Is it possible, especially because as far as I know, he's not produced any corroborating evidence, that he's bullshitting just to try to ingratiate himself with you?
Yeah, so you have a couple of problems here, which is what would his motivation actually be to do this? So to be fair, do I trust Zuckerberg? No, of course not. I don't trust any of these tech giants. That includes Elon Musk. I don't trust him either. But
Fucking cheers, man.
But here's the thing,
Sure.
right? People do have motivations for the things they do. What would Zuckerberg's motivation be in expressing? And by the way, he began expressing this before he knew what the outcome of the new election was going to be even. Okay, he was expressing this before that.
Yeah, but he didn't drop any of these sort of
So the thing is what is his motivation here for explaining that the Department of Justice is reaching out and trying to censor various conservative content, except that he wants to be freed from the yoke of governments approaching Facebook and doing this because it creates all sorts of problems for him in his market, right? He actually has more of an incentive to tell the truth about this than he does to lie.
Well, I don't know if he's lying. I'm just saying, there seems to be, even on the MAGA side, an understanding that he has a credibility issue, number one. Number two, as far as I know, he's not corroborated any of these claims, which perhaps he will in the future. And number three, I think that he would have an incentive to say these things, certainly after the election, given that Trump won, but even before, when the outcome is in doubt, in order to, you actually said it yourself, to distance his social media company from any government intervention.
Yeah, but his incentive then would be to tell the truth about this. There could be, for instance, a guy like Zuckerberg has such a high profile. It would not surprise me if he was called in for congressional hearings, if they were running investigations into various forms of interference, things like this. He would need to actually have his story straight.
But he just said
would need.
But that specific example, this big headline explosive event where they called me on the phone and they were cursing us out. Rogan said, "Haha, those recordings would be sick," and he's like, "No, we don't have any recordings." So he's almost making claims specifically that as of this moment he can't possibly corroborate.
Yeah,
and that's
but the thing is I'm not disputing that he can't corroborate those claims at the moment, right? And like you said, evidence could go out in the future.
Right.
What I'm saying to you is it's a matter of incentives. What's his actual incentive to lie versus telling the truth about this? Seems like he has more incentive to tell the truth about it than to lie about it.
He's
self-preservation.
He's doing this in line with donating, Meta donating $1 million to
Trump's inaugural fund.
Trump's inaugural fund, and also speaking more positively about Trump, and also hiring Dana White, and doing a lot of things that will make Trump like him more. And Trump goes on video yeah, I think this is in response to my threats. And so my point about bringing up that case was I think he's just blowing it out of proportion because every time.
No, yeah, you give a shit about
no,
that.
I'm about to.
every
I'm
time
gonna respond when he's done.
Yeah.
Every time it's been there's been a chance to prove that there's this coercion going on. They can't, which is why I brought up the thing. He is bringing like new versions of the allegations, but they're just overinflated versions of what they were saying before, which they can't prove because in reality, unless something crazy comes out, that's not really the phenomenon that's taking place. But I do want to just note that both Jessiah and I, have demonstrated on our own shows constantly that we can criticize the Biden
let's talk about
administration.
that.
I'm curious, and this is why we came
Hang
here.
on,
If you can
before you
defend
shift it,
Trump's things.
before you shift it, I want to
feel like
respond.
we just gave a very nuanced
briefly,
take on that.
very
We gotta-
briefly.
I want to give you guys the final point on this topic before we move on. So if you want to hit it, or
I want to hit it real quick, and then
Yeah, I'll go after you.
Okay, so
Go ahead.
listen.
Sure.
I watched your coverage of what you just talked about when you were talking about Trump threatening Zuckerberg. Right? You were reading or you were watching CNN pundits who were discussing this, and they left a critical part out, and so did you. Interestingly enough, Luke, which is where Trump said, if he's guilty of crimes. If he's guilty of crimes, that was the actual tweet. If he's guilty of crimes, then we will take action. You left all of that out.
Oh no!
Yeah. Oh no, you did.
I did. You're right.
You
I did not mention
did.
that
You left it all out.
Can I know we're gonna move on, but just so you know, that's what Trump says every time. Obviously, if MSNBC,
Yeah, you left it all. You left it out on
Well, and he
purpose.
didn't just say
Zuckerberg-
take action. He said
please
imprison him
stop.
for life. Man,
If he was guilty
Yes,
of
course he's gonna say
crimes.
that.
shouldn't he be
All right,
guilty of crimes
Oh
that
no!
merit
Did the president say if you're guilty of crimes, I'm going to imprison you? Oh my God!
What crimes? Which crimes merit
I
life
will note
imprisonment?
that.
Like
I will
that's
note
pretty
that next time, I promise, because it doesn't change the argument.
Yeah.
I stand by what I said.
Yeah.
I'll note that he said that's going to be his argument.
That's the crux,
important.
Luke. That's the crux. What's wrong with the president saying if you're guilty of crimes, I'm going to put you in jail? Nothing.
Would
Yes,
you
exactly.
grant that premise for Trump's convictions? Trump is guilty of crimes.
What crimes?
Falsifying business records, 34 counts. He was found guilty in a court of
Oh
law.
my God.
No, wait.
there we go. There we go.
No, listen to me.
Proved it.
Listen to me.
That's his
But
point.
here's my point.
Okay.
You can think that those charges are bullshit, but this idea that it's no big deal if he's guilty of
And
crimes.
if the President Biden came out and said, if Trump's guilty of crimes, which he has, right, he should go to jail, which he has. Yeah, and you know what the liberals say? Hang on, the liberals go, yeah, absolutely.
I'll address this because
It's like, what are you talking about?
We can address this because there's a perspective issue. I think you make a good point that saying if someone's guilty of crimes, behind this view that there's a fear Trump will levy false crimes is a legitimate concern. The issue with the perspective is people do not believe Trump is legitimately guilty of crimes.
Sure.
And so the argument is that Trump is saying legitimately guilty of crimes and the crimes that Trump has been charged with are illegitimate.
Yeah.
That's the perspective.
So we're saying the
Well, I
people
think
he
it-
chooses to
I don't
say
think
that
so. I
about
think the perspective
are people
here-
he has political differences.
I think the perspective here is they're saying, isn't it, if Trump says this, shouldn't you hold the same standard with Democrats? But we do. Biden has said this multiple times. Biden has said if Trump's guilty of crimes, he should go to prison.
I'm
If this
not
person is guilty of crimes, they should go to prison.
I'll just-
like they say it. You know what I mean? Like, what do you
I'm
mean?
not aware. I'm not aware of Biden ever advocating on Trump's guilt or innocence publicly or saying that he should be in prison. My understanding is he's been about as fastidious as a politician can be.
He
Maybe
avoids
there's
that
some
topic
exception,
altogether, yeah.
but I'm not aware of it. And by the way, if
Wait, you think that Democrat,
Maybe he was
Democrat,
asked,
the
but-
entire
you said
Democrat
Biden.
Party,
No, wait, whoa.
Biden too. Yes,
Andrew,
Biden too.
We've been having a good thing here.
Yeah,
Come on.
Biden too. If it is the case,
Totally.
okay, that
You guys have actually had the better thing. I'll be honest
that
with you.
any of these people come out and say if Donald Trump is guilty of, like, wouldn't you guys say that if Donald Trump is guilty of crimes, he should go to
No,
prison?
wait, yes.
Like, what do you
Let's
mean?
just- let me just lay a little framework here. I agree. Of course, the statement is uncontroversial. If someone's guilty of crimes and they're, of a certain level, they should go to prison, obviously.
Yeah.
But any person who unjustly imprisons people says that. And so we're saying of the people Trump chooses to say they should be put in prison or say they should be locked up or say that they should be targeted by the government, it's a very specific set of people he chooses, which is when someone wrongs him politically, all of a sudden now he randomly mentions if you're guilty of crimes, you should go to prison. When they're not accused of crimes, there's no reason to believe they've committed crimes. He'll just throw it out. Obviously, that would be his justification. Zuckerberg committed crimes. But he's just saying that to scare him because there's no reason.
That's
to
an
believe Zuckerberg has
interjection
committed
of an emotional state, not a provable one.
I don't
So,
see any difference between the.
All you're doing is interjecting your. This is how I perceive it. I perceive
I
that
mean,
he's politically targeting people because he said if you're guilty of crimes, you're going to
Let me
jail.
tell you this. If precedent, I'll just, again, throw you a bone here because maybe there's something out there that I miss. I don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of Biden's, every statement he's made. If he ever adopted the same sort of posture that Trump did of like,
Fox News.
Fox News, a great example. They had to pay $787 million in the biggest defamation settlement in American history because it was very possible that they would lose that case against Dominion. We've never seen anything like that in liberal media. Biden could have, by Trump's own logic, said, you know what? Fox just had to pay nearly $1 billion in a loyalty tithe to Donald Trump. We never sent MSNBC or CNN. So you know what? I'm ordering my DOJ to investigate Fox News. Yeah. And if Fox News executives are guilty of these things, we're going to throw them away for life or imprison them for life. Biden could have said that. He didn't. And if he did say it, that'd be super fucked up. Because I do think what you're describing...
Unless they're secret subpoenas.
Well, what you're describing
which would surprise me.
What you're describing as an anodyne statement, to me, it takes a sinister tone when it comes from a person in power.
Oh,
By the
it's
way,
a sinister tone. So it's an emotional state.
Well,
obviously.
It's an emotional state.
You could reject... I'm just saying that I would hold Biden to the same standard if he did some of that shit.
Yeah.